Iron Man is undeniably one of the leading staples of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. His debut self-titled film, which came out in 2008, was the very first Marvel release for this new wave of tied-together films. Audiences adore Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark, the witty, egotistical, brilliant billionaire hero. Iron Man has saved the day on a number of occasions, making him not only one of the most likable characters, but also one of the most trustworthy superheroes. Despite his backtalk and sarcasm, you can always count on Tony Stark to do the right thing. That's exactly what he did in Avengers Endgame, and the results were devastating. Before going any further, you should be warned that this video offers quite a few in-game spoilers, so proceed at your own risk. We'll be looking into what happened to Iron Man and what the future may hold for the character. While it appears as though Robert Downey Jr. won't be continuing the role, that doesn't mean the character of Iron Man will completely cease to exist in the MCU. There are a number of potential candidates who can take over his position, and we'll be breaking them down and analyzing them in this video. You're watching The Binger, and this is Marvel's next Iron Man, everyone who could replace Tony Stark. To start things off, let's examine exactly what happened to Tony Stark thus far. In order to predict the future, it's important to understand the past. The most important fact is that Tony Stark, also known to audiences as Iron Man, is no more. Yes, he unfortunately passes away during Avengers Endgame, doing so in classic heroic fashion. By using the Infinity Gauntlet to defeat Thanos and his army, Tony ultimately sealed his own fate in the process. It's a fitting farewell to one of Marvel's biggest names, and the namesake of the very first movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After being one of the unspoken leaders of the Avengers, we see you, Cap, his departure leaves a glaring hole in the roster. It's like a basketball team losing one of its star players. That means it's time for someone else to step up. Tony Stark is undeniably done, but that might not be the case for the character of Iron Man. It's possible that someone else dons the suit, or takes over the tech genius role within the Avengers, only under a different name. Just like Captain America handed his shield over to Falcon in Endgame, the role of Iron Man may too be passed along to someone else. After all, the comic books have replaced Tony Stark on a number of occasions, with multiple different people stepping in for the eccentric billionaire when he's been incapacitated, missing, or temporarily deceased. Yeah, superheroes often come back from the afterlife in the comics, although that's less likely to occur on screen. Tony Stark is gone. That much we can guarantee by the fact that Robert Downey Jr.'s contract with Marvel is up. So who, if anyone, will step into the suit? We've got a couple of ideas. James Rhodes. James Rhodes, who fans know as War Machine, is the most logical candidate to take over the role of Iron Man. After all, he's been using the suit and acting as a watered-down version of the egotistical hero for quite some time. Stark and Rhodes have a long backstory together, so we know that he's someone Stark would trust, and nobody is more qualified to wear the suit than Lieutenant Colonel Rhodey. With experience piloting the Iron Man armor, it wouldn't be a large leap to simply have Rhodes don the moniker. Not much else would really have to change. The question comes down to the actor who portrays War Machine, Don Cheadle. Marvel's plans to keep churning out movies doesn't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. While Cheadle may be primed for a jump from secondary character to main hero, it'll be interesting to see if Marvel is willing to invest so much in a 54-year-old actor. After all, they're trying to get younger and appeal to a younger demographic, so promoting an actor in his mid-50s to the role of superhero could be deemed questionable. It's likely that Cheadle will reprise the role of War Machine in future films, but would be surprising if he starts to use the name Iron Man. Pepper Potts. This would be one heck of a redemption story. In Endgame, we learn that Tony Stark and Pepper Potts finally get married. The pair even have a child together, before Tony gets called back to work and meets his untimely demise. It would stand to reason that Pepper has more of a motive than anyone to don the Iron Man armor and take over the role. After all, Tony was her husband, and someone she not only cared for deeply, but knew everything about. She could technically step right into his armored shoes without skipping a beat. There'd be no learning curve or catching up, as she's well versed in all things Iron Man. This would also stay consistent with Marvel's rise of female heroes in recent years, with the likes of Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, and Captain Marvel all showing up as fan favorites. Marvel is well aware that another butt-kicking female is a good idea. In fact, in the comics, Pepper actually does wear her own version of the Iron Man armor, only under the name Rescue. Rumors were already circulating that Pepper Potts will become Rescue in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's still uncertain if actress Gwyneth Paltrow, who plays the role and has seemed rather disenchanted with Marvel movies in the past, will remain a part of the storyline or not. She did appear in Spider-Man: Homecoming as well as Endgame, but her future with the franchise is yet to be determined. Shuri. The Avengers absolutely need a tech genius, that much is a guarantee. Bruce Banner is technically qualified, especially now that he has the ability to morph into the Hulk while keeping his wits about him. It would help if said genius also had a bit of an attitude and enjoyed using sarcasm, a personality trait that Banner absolutely lacks. While Tony Stark may be done for good, that criteria sounds a lot like another character we've seen before. Yes, Shuri, T'Challa's kid sister from Black Panther. In her short time in the MCU, she's already proven to be utterly brilliant. First, she develops a whole slew of amazing battle gear for a newly crowned bro. Then, she managed to undo the Winter Soldier's homicidal brainwashing. She even nearly succeeds in removing the Mind Stone from Vision without killing him, if only she had a little more time. As far as we can tell, she's the mastermind behind most of the technology in Wakanda's super advanced capital. She actually makes Tony Stark's robot suits look pretty weak in comparison to what she can develop. As mentioned earlier, Marvel knows the value of a strong female hero, especially a younger one they can hitch their wagon to for a long time. Shuri has the perfect combination of intelligence and wit that would make Tony Stark proud. However, she isn't exactly battle tested. She would need to up her combat skills if she plans on joining the Avengers, or better yet, replacing one of their leaders. It certainly helps that everybody adores up-and-coming actress Letitia Wright, who plays the role. RiRi Williams. Speaking of a brilliant young woman, another potential candidate for the Iron Man role is RiRi Williams. If that name doesn't ring a bell, don't feel bad. She hasn't been featured yet in a Marvel movie, and is relatively new in the comics as well. RiRi is a genius teenage African-American engineering student who manages to reverse engineer her own Iron Man suit. First introduced to readers in May's Invincible Iron Man number 9, adding her to the MCU would continue Marvel's slow progress towards better diversity and representation. In the comics, she gets kicked out of school for manufacturing her own Iron Man suit. Tony Stark, still alive in this universe, discovers the 15-year-old and takes her under his wing, grooming her to be his replacement. She doesn't use the name Iron Man though, instead going by Ironheart. If you're a comic book fan, you may have noticed her featured prominently right there in the center of the promotional artwork for Marvel's next initiative, Divided We Stand. According to Axel Alonso, the editor-in-chief, this will be a new status quo for the comic company's properties moving forward. Although relatively new to the scene, RiRi, or Ironheart, seems to be here to stay and will become a key player in the Marvel comics. Going the same route on screen could be a really cool move as well, as it would keep Marvel's cast younger and more diverse, as well as offer some fresh faces that comic book fans haven't been seeing for decades already. Harley Keener. Remember the kid from Iron Man 3 who Tony Stark develops a bond with? The one who kept forgetting to get Tony a sandwich while he worked on his suit? For those who forget, that kid's name was Harley Keener, and he may just be the next Iron Man, or Iron Lad if we're staying true to the comics. This storyline makes a lot of sense, as most of the setup work is already done. The kid already has a pre-existing relationship with Tony, as well as a motive for stepping up and donning the suit. Marvel loves planting seeds that pay off years later. Perhaps the most telling part of the theory is the actor who plays Harley, Ty Simpkins. After signing a standard 3-movie contract with Marvel, Ty has only appeared in one solo film, Iron Man 3. He's right at that 18-year-old line where Marvel could get some serious mileage out of him if they decide to start implementing him now as Tony's successor. In fact, despite just appearing in a supporting role in one film, Ty has been at nearly every MCU red carpet event in the last 5 years, and was included in that MCU 10-year class photo. He's clearly still on the company's radar, so it wouldn't be an enormous shock if they chose to incorporate him moving forward. Doctor Doom. If we're going off the comics, then this is a very real possibility. Fans will remember Doctor Doom's tenure as the infamous Iron Man before going back to his villainous ways, so it would stand to reason that this storyline could make its way onto the big screen. However, it would be odd of Marvel Studios to fast-track one of their most famed and notorious bad guys into a hero role like Iron Man. Then again, they have surprised us before. What makes this a little more interesting and possible is the recent Fox and Disney merger. You see, Doctor Doom was a property of Fox that belonged exclusively to the X-Men and Fantastic Four side of things. Now that the two companies are technically able to share assets, it's no longer impossible for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to feature one of the brand's mightiest villains, Doctor Doom. While it's unlikely that he'll reprise the role of Iron Man, it's more likely that we'll end up seeing him on screen in some capacity. Iron Spider. Marvel Studios has invested a ton of time and energy into the Tony Stark-Peter Parker relationship. It's somewhat of a father-son bond more than it is a mentor-apprentice setup. Therefore, it would make a lot of sense if Spider-Man takes it upon himself to fill his former hero's shoes. We've already seen Spider-Man wear the Iron Spider suit, so he may continue along the same path until fully merging the two characters into one mega one, Iron Spider. We already know that Spider-Man continues his web-slinging in Marvel's next release, Far From Home. Fans were curious as to why Nick Fury shows up to play the role of Coach rather than Tony Stark. Well, that's answered now, since we know Stark's fate in Endgame. It's likely that Tom Holland will remain with the studio for quite a while, seeing as he's only 22, so they'd be wise to invest in him and make him one of their more prominent characters. Teenage Tony Stark. Here's hoping Marvel doesn't go down this route. There was one infamous storyline in the Avengers comics called The Crossing. In it, it's revealed that Iron Man was actually secretly evil the whole time. I bet that was a real aha moment for Captain America. The Avengers then recruit the services of a 19-year-old Tony Stark from the past to help them. Originally released in the mid-90s, this storyline features Tony Stark as a protagonist as well as the antagonist, which made it very confusing. The teenage version helps the Avengers save the day and bring older Tony back to his senses. However, in an attempt to redeem himself, older Tony perishes. Teen Tony sticks around to replace his deceased former self. The whole thing sounds confusing and doesn't get any less confusing once you actually read it. Interestingly, Marvel Studios isn't new to the idea of a teenage Tony. In Captain America Civil War, we see a virtual reality flashback to Tony as a boy. The studio used Robert Downey Jr.'s image, only de-aged to make it look like a kid. While they've done it before, it's unlikely to happen again, seeing as how Marvel would need the services of Robert Downey Jr. to wear the motion capture suit and continue his involvement with the franchise. So that's not looking so likely. No Iron Man. That's right, the simplest solution of them all is just to let sleeping dogs lie. Tony Stark had an incredible run as one of the most awesome superheroes in movie history, successfully leading things off for the entire cinematic universe and playing a key role in a number of major films. Not only were there 3 Iron Man movies, but he shared the spotlight in Captain America Civil War, as well as led the Avengers in all 4 of their self-titled movies. His accolades speak for themselves. On top of that, Robert Downey Jr. was so good at the character, it would just be an injustice to have someone else attempt to match him. It would be unfair to him, as well as whoever would be tasked with filling those massive robotic shoes. He'll forever be remembered as Iron Man, and the studio should let his legacy live on in infamy. Tony Stark was one of a kind, and it would be silly to try to replace him. Well, those are all the candidates we can think of. Is there anyone we missed? Who do you think will replace Tony Stark and take over the role of Iron Man? Be sure to let us know down in the comments. And before you go, we'd love it if you gave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And until next time, you've been watching The Binger.